So hello, my name is Daisy Ouya, and I'm with the World Agroforestry Center. I work there as a communications specialist, and I'm here with Dr. Eike Luedeling, who is a senior decision analyst with the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF. And Eike has just given a very interesting talk about making good decisions for development impact that is informed by research. So today we're going to delve a little bit deeper into that topic. Yeah, welcome, Eike.
Thank you.
So my first question to you, Eike, is that there's a big concern about food security in Africa, and much as there's a lot of research that's already been done, why are we not seeing this research translated into gains in agricultural productivity and reduction in hunger and poverty?
I think with thanks. That's a good question, Daisy. I think with many of the technologies that we develop, we're waiting a little bit too long to actually test them in the real world. We develop things on research stations and in laboratories, and only very late in the development process do we actually start thinking about what will the impacts be on the field, how will they how will the technology be taken up, and what risks are we actually facing, or possible problems can come up. And I think in order to improve that situation, all researchers probably should be requested to start much earlier to think about the larger implications of what they're doing. Basically, think through the entire impact pathways we're considering. I mean, we've moved a lot, very strongly towards impact orientation in the CG, but I think I'm not quite sure we're completely living it quite yet. I mean, we all have impact pathways and theories of change, but often they come as an afterthought, and we only start thinking about them once we're already pretty far ahead in terms of development of technologies. And if at the beginning of any new line of research, for example, we sat together with experts on the technology, but also with experts who represent and who understand the systems we're targeting, also representatives from the field, actual farmers possibly, people whose lives we're actually trying to influence, and think about all the things that have to be in place for the technology to work out. What risks are we facing? What culture we're trying to work with? What can we already anticipate? I think then we have a pretty good chance of anticipating the problems that may come up, possibly doing something about it, and possibly also realizing when a new technology we might be developing might be actually missing the target.
So you're saying that we need to look at the impact pathway right from the very beginning before we start doing any research. And the impact pathway goes all the way from the research all the way to adoption, or does it even go further than that?
Yeah, I think it goes even further. I mean, adoption is an important step, but we haven't promised to our donor that we get technologies adopted. So this cannot be our end goal. I mean, ultimately we're working towards the SDGs, towards the goals that we've set to ourselves as an institution: improved food security, reduced poverty, improved nutrition, etc. So we really have to think, basically logically fill the gap between what we do and how we're actually going to improve people's lives. And of course, there's a complex path that we normally have to tread in order to get there. But I think we owe it to our clients and to our donors to actually think things through all the way to the end from the beginning. Yes.
Great. And actually, during your session, there was the question that came up about public trust in research, and sometimes people distrust what they hear from research. How can you, as a researcher, show better that research has value and that research pays off, and that amidst all the uncertainties, we need to continue doing some good research?
Yeah, I think also to this, the solution lies in impact-oriented thinking, impact thinking, really. Because if we want to demonstrate that our work has an impact, we have to be able to demonstrate how that actually happens. I mean, we have to look through all the events that have to happen in order for our work to cause impact on the ground, and we have to identify all the intermediate steps and possibly collect some data as we implement something on those intermediate steps. And I mean the changes in opinion by decision makers. You know, for example, increased fruit uptake by pregnant women, etc. Some things that are actually related to what we do, and somewhere in the middle on our pathway to impact. I think that's quite important. Just to give you an example, in a couple of weeks from now, we're going to have a workshop in Nairobi where we build an impact model for fruit trees on farm as to their nutritional impacts. Yeah? So there we're going to gather some experts together, because experts are normally the ones who can tell us most about how things actually happen. We're going to construct this logical model. What are the steps that have to occur? Where do the fruits go? Where do the nutrients go? Do they actually end up where we want them to be? Yeah, and we really have to logically think this through. Also identify indicators that we can monitor. We cannot only say, well, the people, now we've planted these trees 10 years ago and now people are better nourished, because that can have all kinds of reasons. If we can't demonstrate that we've also done, like, had these intermediate successes, yeah, we had opinions change, we had people's fruit intake actually go up, then we won't be able to make a compelling case that this was actually our work that's done the job.
Yeah, so we need to keep tracking what it is that we are doing on the ground with using different indicators. Yeah, so that's great. The other question I had for you, Eike, is there's so much that we don't know, and even more that's coming with climate change that we don't actually know, and there's limited research dollars. How do you prioritize what it is that you need to work on as a researcher in order to make it valuable, good use of the money, and also for impact? And I know that you've done some work on that.
Yeah, that's true. And we've, like in our group, in the Land Health Decisions group at the World Agroforestry Center in Nairobi, we've realized that it's actually that all impact pathways that we've seen from around the CG always include important decisions being made a different way because of evidence that is available. So you have a policymaker or you have a development professional making a better decision that then reaches lots of people. I mean, implementation decision of a project. You can do things one way or the other. If you do things a little bit better, you can potentially reach thousands or possibly millions of farmers. If we manage to affect these decisions, then we actually have an impact. So we've decided to take this seriously and focus on these decisions and actually analyze decisions and figure out what these decision makers actually need to know. And for that, we're making use of a discipline that we're not really using a lot yet in agricultural development, but we should probably use a lot more. And that's called decision analysis, which is really quite widely used in some fields, like in business decision making, etc. But we don't do it so much yet. And basically, how this works is that we gather a team of experts on a particular decision and the target group that we're working with. And we really have them name everything that we should be knowing, everything that matters for the decision. We then go on to try and figure out what we already know. Yeah? We assess the actual state of knowledge that we have already, and then we run some simulation procedures that I was told are too technical to discuss here in detail. But we can actually determine which of these knowledge gaps are the ones that we should be concentrating our efforts on. Because normally there are many things that we don't know, as you said, but most of them we actually don't need to know. The decision maker doesn't want to know them; it doesn't need to know them. Like if we already know what the soil is like, more or less, taking a bit more soil data is probably not the answer. But we might find something much bigger. Yeah? I mean, what's the chance of people adopting yellow maize or something of the sort? Something we have never researched before, never even dreamt of researching, but there's something that is actually brought up by people from the ground. We may realize this is the critical knowledge gap, and you can imagine that this is not very difficult to find out. It's possible, it may even be possible to change things as we go. I mean, we may have a technology that needs a bit of accompanying work. I mean, we might create awareness that maybe the color of maize doesn't matter, or whatever it may be. But it is necessary to do this in order for our technology to work. And if we do this thorough analysis beforehand, thinking about everything that matters, we may be able to design more robust interventions, technology plus awareness building, for example, or we may be able to identify the knowledge gaps we should really be closing. And sometimes those are much easier than the research programs we normally would normally design. The point is really to put a bit of effort into an intervention at the beginning. Yeah, convene a workshop, do some initial analysis to really help us spend research dollars much more effectively than we otherwise would.
That's great. So with decision analysis, it can make the difference between almost success and failure, if I hear you correctly. Yeah, so the other thing is that with growing population, with climate change, a big concern is environmental sustainability. How can we both improve food production and not degrade the environment any further than it's degraded, if anything, even restore it to a better place? Can your kind of analysis and thinking also help in this?
I think it can, but I think in order to really value sustainability or give sustainability the importance that it really should have, probably, and you're totally right on that, we have to start valuing it and including it in our assessments of systems. Like we, as agricultural scientists who give support to governments, etc., we tend to focus on entities, on variables we have data for, and we normally have, say, yield data for a crop. Yeah, so we often tend to give that yield data. Well, this is the yield potential of this crop, so adopt this variety. This is the kind of advice we may often be giving, but at the same time, we're struggling with including in such advice things that we don't have information on. But that basically, I mean, we can say, well, we don't have data, so we can't say anything. This is what you sometimes hear from scientists. But really, if we provide advice that just leaves those factors out completely, we are assigning a value to it, and that value is 0. Yeah. So all the ecosystem services that a system might provide that we don't have data for, they actually are valuable, and we should find ways of including them into our assessments. We should not value them at 0. Let me give you an example from. So I work on agroforestry systems, and we often struggle with the fact that crop yields under trees may not be higher at all times than crop yields under high input monoculture systems. But that doesn't mean that they're less valuable, because of course there are other products farmers are getting. Farmers are getting fuel wood, farmers are getting timber, possibly construction wood, farmers might be getting fruits, they're getting shade, they're getting hydrologic services, they're getting all kinds of services in addition to crop yields. If we did a comprehensive analysis, we may not have precise data on how much fuel wood they're getting, but we may be able to come up with a range of the value of this. It may be anywhere from, say, $10 to $1,000 or whatever, if we really don't know. If we learn to calculate with these ranges and this uncertain information, we actually gain the possibility of including these into our assessment. And we might get to an assessment of the total economic value that doesn't completely ignore the fact that agriculture is supposed to be a multifunctional business these days. Agriculture does not only produce yields, and that is, I think, well understood by pretty much everyone. There's a whole array of ecosystem services we expect agriculture to provide, carbon sequestration, but I think also things like cultural identity that are very difficult to value. We had somebody in this morning session talking about the spiritual value of agriculture. Where does that factor into the advice we're giving to governments? So we have to get better at considering these things, even if they are only as some sort of probability distribution, some ranges, confidence intervals. We should do anything in our power to not value them at 0 when we talk to decision makers. People want numbers, but if we don't have numbers, it doesn't mean we should just omit things entirely.
I agree. Definitely, a tree does not have zero value, and they need to think holistically. So that was really great information that you've given us, and we're going to learn more about decision analysis, I think, if we watch you. Thank you so much, Eike.